What was the command line like on 80s PCs? Imagine sitting in front of a black screen with just a blinking cursor, ready to tell your computer what to do. That was the reality for many people using personal computers in the 1980s. If you owned an IBM personal computer or an Apple Roman II, your main way of communicating with the machine was through a command line interface. It was simple but powerful, and it was the only way to control your computer before graphical interfaces took over. The primary operating system for IBM PCs was MS-DOS, which stood for Microsoft Disk Operating System. It used a text-based command line as the only way to interact with the computer. There were no icons, no windows, no mouse. Everything was typed out in commands that the computer understood. The prompt was usually just C or C, on the screen, waiting for you to type your next command. Using the command line meant learning specific commands and their syntax. You would type a command after the prompt, then add options or switches to modify what the command did. For example, to see what files were in a folder, you typed dir and pressed enter. If you wanted to see files in subfolders too, you added S, making it dir. Commands like copy, del, and format were common for managing files and disks. You had to remember these commands because there was no help menu or visual clues. Error messages were often cryptic. If you typed a command wrong, the computer might just say bad command or file name, or give a confusing error code. There was no internet or forums to ask questions, so users relied on thick manuals that came with their computers. Finding the right command or fixing a mistake could take some trial and error. If you accidentally formatted a disk or deleted files, it could be costly and frustrating. The keyboard was your only input device, and the screen only showed text output. You entered one command at a time, then waited for the response. There were no menus or drop-down options to click. Everything had to be memorized or looked up in manuals. It was a learning process, but it gave you a real sense of control over your machine. Despite these challenges, the command line was incredibly efficient for those who mastered it. Programmers and system administrators loved it because it was fast and used less memory than graphical interfaces. You could run batch scripts to automate tasks, manage files quickly, or launch programs with just a few keystrokes. It was the backbone of early personal computing. During the 1980s, the command line was the main way to use a computer. As the decade went on, graphical user interfaces like the Apple Macintosh and later Microsoft Windows started to appear. But even then, power users and programmers kept using the command line because it was so precise. It was a time when knowing how to type commands made you feel like a real computer expert. That era of computing was all about control, speed, and learning the language of your machine.